Hello and welcome back to the Fireside Chats at Raisina Dialogue 2022. I'm Maha Siddiqui and I have a special guest with me today, and that is the Foreign Minister of Slovenia, Anže Logar. Many thanks for speaking with us.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be here.
So I'll begin by talking to you about the changes in your own country at the moment. There's an outgoing cabinet and a new government is going to come in. Both of them looking quite different, I suppose. Did it come as a surprise that a 4-month-old party could have defeated the current government?
Well, we had in Slovenia a special situation for the last 4 elections. 3 of them were won by a newly established party. So apparently our electorate did not get bored by this issue. So we are witnessing the same situation once again. But again, the party that I belong to, it's one of the rare 2 traditional party that still, and the only one that still has a broad support among Slovenian electorate.
So from what we understand from the reports that are coming in is that the possibility of the incoming Prime Minister, if I can say so, at the moment, Robert Golob, he is poles apart from the present current Prime Minister in ideology. So do you expect any changes in the policies with a new government?
In foreign policy,
Yes.
hope not, because what we did during my tenure, that we've closely followed the strategy of foreign policy that was adopted during previous government, and in a way renovated a bit due to new challenges that we are facing now for the incoming years. So I hope and I expect that the new foreign minister shall follow this strategy, because this is the only viable solution for defending the national interest on one side, and as well following the international rule-based order and multilateral fora that we subscribed when we gained our independence.
So certainly the aspect of security is going to be extremely important in the backdrop of the Ukraine war. Do you expect any changes there, or you are expecting it to be seamless because of the current crisis as well?
Well, the war in Ukraine is something that we cannot diverse our opinion. It's a black and white issue. So one shall follow the universal values and all foundation of modern world, and should one respect this, should follow the same line we did during this government. So I do not expect any changes in position of Slovenia towards the Russian aggression in Ukraine. And I hope that in incoming weeks, more countries will join European Union and all other allied forces in their endeavor to use all possible means to deter Russia from continuing their shelling and killing of Ukrainian people and invading into Ukraine.
In East Europe in particular, Anže Logar, there is a concern, and one can feel it on the ground. I went to Poland and it was very palpable, the fear on the ground among the general public, and they called President Putin as unpredictable. Is that the sense that you see in other parts of Europe also, Central Europe and other parts of Europe? Do they believe that things can still go further out of control?
Well, if we are too soft on Russia, they might. Russians understand only tough language. So we should not use a more moderate approach in order to accommodate Russians. We should be very strong defenders of universal values. And should we perceive with this policy, Russia will sooner or later recognize that they made a mistake. Sooner, better for them. Later, they will pay higher price.
But Russia has its own concerns. In fact, they have pointed out that one of the reasons for their aggression against Ukraine is that the NATO has been moving eastwards. Do you think that is a legitimate argument in a situation where they have invaded a country?
Do you believe this narrative?
You tell me.
Yeah, but I'm asking you, do you believe this narrative?
Well, that's something that Russia wants the world to listen to.
Yeah,
They feel
but
that
explain me then this fact. Should Ukraine join NATO, Russia would border to 16% of its border to NATO country. Their initial thought was conquering Ukraine. And by conquering Ukraine, they would have the whole border with the NATO member state. So is this narrative viable? Is this a real narrative? Or is just a pretext in order to fulfill the dream that was explained in the essay that in June Mr. Putin published in Kremlin's webpage?
But do you think diplomacy should have been given a greater thrust and chance, in some sense, not trying to antagonize Russia further by the kind of pressure that was built? Could it have helped the situation?
How can you antagonize somebody who uses tanks, bayonets, bullets to kill children, women, elderly, to shelling the civil object? How can you? I mean, there's a war in Ukraine. Sooner all on this globe will admit that there is a war in Ukraine. Sooner this possible argument will fade away. When the last soldier of Russia will move from internationally recognized territory of Ukraine, it will be the end of this conflict.
But many lives have already been lost. India has been stressing on the need for dialogue and diplomacy to end this violence that we are seeing. How do you see that happening at this stage?
Well, we all see development, the new offensive of Russian troops that are illegally on the territory of Ukraine land, shelling the civil object, killing citizens, Ukrainians in India. So I think that it's everyone kind of focused that Russia should stop shooting Ukrainians, and then we can discuss how to find this solution.
All right, so let's turn our attention a bit now to the sanctions that have been imposed on Russia, and also the fact that has been highlighted in the recent past, that of the energy dependence of Europe on Russia. Many countries believe that the response from the European side couldn't have been immediate and harsher towards Russia because of this dependence, energy dependence. How do you see Europe being able to tackle this? Because it can't happen overnight.
Well, Europe did marvelous job. I followed the discussion in the format of European foreign ministers. In the first week of the aggression, we sat together 5 times. And it was stark change from Monday to Sunday. So when at the beginning there was still some reluctant foreign minister, on Sunday we were united that there should be response in a very strong manner, unison, and with a very clear message that should Russia would continue with this illegal, brutal war, Europe will go on with its sanctions. And now we already adopted 5 rounds of sanctions. The 6th round is in the pipeline. There was unanimity among 27 member states. And I said, I hope that as well other countries from the globe that has substantial leverage on world economy will follow those sanctions. There are many countries that are followed, but there are still some that they do not.
But what is the solution to tackling the militarily resurgent Russia? And is Europe up to the challenge? Can Europe do that?
Not alone, with the help of its allies. And one must say that United States here, they are doing a marvelous job. Europeans, we are doing marvelous job as well with other partners, Japan, Australia, United Kingdom. And I think the only way is to show that Russia is on a wrong path, is to go even further with its sanctions. And I hope that there will not be some circumvention of this sanction from, let's say, third party that would like to gain from this conflict.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, there is a continuation of this debate on how to tackle the issue of dependency on Russian energents. I mean, face it, sincerely, buying oil and gas from Russia means financing the war and giving money for tanks of Russia army to shelling Ukrainian cities. So I'm very glad that what we heard from German Foreign Minister Mrs. Baerbock, that until the end of this year, definitely we will be ready to cut dependence on Russian oil. And I think that we shall all follow this example in order to refrain Russia from gaining fresh dollars for financing their illegitimate war.
It's interesting you raise that point because much has been made of India wanting to continue buying oil from Russia, discounted oil from Russia, though it makes only 1 to 2% of India's energy needs. But there was much said from the Western world on India's decision to buy that discounted oil. How do you view it?
Well, as I said, I mean, in multilateral fora, it's every country to decide upon itself. The problem with the countries of European Union was that we became too dependent on Russian oil. So we have to find a solution for that, and it's our clear intention to do it in a framework of a time until the end of this year. And this is as well wake-up call for invest heavily in green transition. So we shall do our utmost in the very limited period of time to diverse our energy need from fossil fuels to renewables. And I'm confident that European Union is able to do, and it will be even forced to do in a much shorter period of time than it was adopted by the COP26 conference in Glasgow.
Okay. So from convergences that we are seeing at the moment between the European countries over the issue of Ukraine, let me now talk about some divergences that we've seen among the European countries and perhaps in some CEE countries with regards to investments by China. Many people believe, and there is a narrative, that it's almost like buying out some of the European countries for China to find more stake in European Union, have their say, if I can put it that way, indirectly in the European Union. There are difference of opinion on Chinese investments within European countries. What is your view on that aspect? Do you think heavy dependence on China and its investment can again lead to a critically difficult situation in the future?
Well, there should be no heavy dependence on a third party. And this is what we learned by the last two crises. Pandemic COVID-19, where we were too dependent on medical material from China, and war in Ukraine, where we are too dependent on energens from Russia. And I guess this was one of the reasons why European Union countries adopted the strategic compass. This is a strategic document that attract a great portion of its interest in what you are what you are trying to say, in order to preserve or re-establish our strategic autonomy, we should disperse our dependency on all critical sectors of our economy. And I think this is the path we are going together in incoming years.
So finally, will that mean that there could be some greater collaboration between the European countries, between Slovenia and India in the Indo Pacific?
Definitely there should be. I mean, European Union develop its own strategy on the, let's say, align strongly on the Indo-Pacific, and I think that this is one of the prerequisites for future enhancing our cooperation, which I think sincerely it's in a mutual interest, and as India is the most numerous democracy in the world, I think vice versa is as well in a big interest for the India. So I see very bright future in this cooperation.
All right. On that rather positive note, we leave it at that. Many thanks for speaking with us here on Raisina Dialogue.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.